are almost always great simplifiers who can cut through argument, debate, and doubt to offer a solution everyone can understand. A very good morning to one and all present here. I welcome you all to the annual Maria Philip Memorial Intercollegiate Debate Competition. I also welcome our beloved chairman, Professor J. Philip, our vice chairman, Professor C. Ravindranath sir, and our director, Mr. M. Niliyappan sir. And then also we welcome the jury members. Xavier Institute of Management and Entrepreneurship is India's leading business school with fully residential campus in Bangalore, Kochi, and Chennai. Founded in 1991 by a group of accomplished academicians and public-spirited men, the institute today is recognized for its state-of-art infrastructure and proficient faculty. Professor J. Philip, former director, IIMB Bangalore, has founded, nurtured, and developed the institution, and Zyme continues to grow under his able leadership. Zyme's journey of growth is a saga of milestones and continued success. Over the years, Zyme has grown in national rankings and currently features in the top 25 B schools in India. The flagship program, PGDM, the flagship PGDM program is AICTE approved and accepts total of 420 students across all 3 campuses. Now, I would like to introduce to you the person behind whom Zyme was started. Maria Philip. Born in Changaseri, Kerala on 9th April 1964, Maria got her ICSE from Loreto Convent, Ranchi in 1980. She did her higher secondary schooling at Convent of Jesus and Mary from New Delhi and went on to do her BA Honours in Psychology from Jesus and Mary College, New Delhi. A born leader, Maria was an excellent orator and an organizer too. Though she was studious, she was equally active participant in extracurricular activities as well. She was a head girl at the Loreto School, Ranchi, games captain at Convent of Jesus and Mary School, and secretary of the debating club at Jesus and Mary College. The crowning glory for Maria was when she was elected as the most popular girl at the All India Cultural Festival Montage at Jesus and Mary College in 1984. Having been passionate about human resources management, she decided to pursue a master's program in personal management at Madras School of Social Work. Unfortunately, during her final year, she was called to the gods abode on 30th September 1986, shattering all her dreams of contributing to the development of the society. Maria was the inspiration behind her father in the founding of Zyme. Moving on, I would like to introduce to you all the 3 jury members we have today for the debate competition. First, we have Mr. Brian Fernandez, who is the CEO, Spearhead Media Private Limited, and management consultant at Skillmate, and a management consultant at Skillmate. Currently, COO at Spearhead Media Private Limited, looking after operational and editorial roles of the news portal, newskarnataka.com, and an HR consultant and trainer at Skillmates Consultant, Mangalore. He's also involved in providing HR and business consultancy services and leadership training. He also previously worked at Al Suwadi Holdings, KSA, Zulon Energy, Kudremukh Iron and Steel, and ITI Limited. Next we welcome you, sir. Next we have Veera Katpitla, NLP coach and trainer. She's also a Reiki Grandmaster and a life coach, and also an executive coach. She's also an ex-banker, an avid Toastmaster for the past 20 years, and a distinguished Toastmaster. She's a soft skill trainer, an NLP coach, and a trainer at corporates and management associations. She's also a co-author of the book, NLP for Managerial Excellence. We welcome you, ma'am. Next, we have Dr. Malini N. Hebar, Professor of English in St. Agnes College. She is an MA, MPhil, and PhD in English Literature. Her minor research program was on innovative methods of teaching English in multicultural context. She has done her additional certificate courses in journalism and HRD. She is the former faculty of IMS, Time, and Trisha, which train students for competitive exams. She is also a member of the Research Ethics Committee of Kasturba Medical College, Anti-Sexual Harassment and Women's Grievance Cell of NITTE Mangalore, boss of SDM Ujre, and Social Work and School of Social Work, Toastmasters International, Inner Wheel, and Samatha. We welcome you, ma'am. Now, I would like to invite Professor Ramesh Ranjan sir to share a few words.
Thank you, Vibha. It's my great pleasure to welcome our chairman, our vice chairman, our director, all the senior faculty and faculty members of Zyme. It's my pleasure to welcome all the colleges who are participating in this event in memory of Maria Philip. Special thanks to our jury members who have taken time off their valuable time to be here. And indeed, it's a very nostalgic memory not only for Professor Philip, for Zyme, but also for me, because Maria and me studied together at the Madras School of Social Work in 1986. She was my junior, and I had the privilege of being a senior at that point of time. She was a bright, young, bubbly girl, and unfortunately, due to a freak accident, she lost her life. And what a great memory her father has built in the form of Xavier Institute of Management Entrepreneurship, and also instituted this annual debating competition in memory of her. And I'm privileged and happy to be coordinating this event for the second year in memory of her. We've had some wonderful exchanges and debates over the years, and even this year, it started off with Bangalore and then Mysore, and we're looking forward to some very exciting conversations and debate today. I once again welcome all of you all, and I hope that we have a good time over the next couple of hours. Thank you, and over to you, Vibha.
Thank you, sir, for your words. Moving on, I would like to announce the topic for today's debate and discussion. The topic is government's economic measure to deal with the impact of COVID-19 have so far been effective. I repeat, government's economic measures to deal with the impact of COVID-19 have so far been effective. Moving forward, these are the rules for the competition. Only one team is allowed to participate from each B school. Each team will have 2 members, out of which at least one must be a girl. One speaker will speak for the motion, for which you have 4 minutes, and the other speaker will speak against the motion, for which you have 4 minutes. There will be a warning bell after 3.5 minutes. There will be no cross rebuttal rounds. Negative marking for exceeding the 4-minute time limit. Teams should not wear their college uniform, blazers, indicating the name of their institution, nor mention the name of their institution during the speech. Also, to wait in the waiting room for 10 minutes before the scheduled time. All the participants are requested to enter the waiting room in the same order as mentioned here. The prices for the last year regional rounds were as follows. 3 teams out of the total 11 will go to the finals. First place will have a cash reward of 10,000. Second place will have a cash reward of 3,000. And third place will have a cash reward of 2,000 respectively.
I noticed that there were 2 kinds of people, the optimists and the pessimists. The optimists were those who were extremely positive, grabbed every opportunity that came their way, and would be steadfast and fight against the invisible enemy. And on the other hand, we are the pessimists who, irrespective of what the opportunities were provided to them by the government of the country, would figure out a way to be negative, find loopholes, and complain and cut a sorry figure for themselves. I didn't have to go far and wide looking for these 2 kinds of people. I found them in my very own neighborhood, in Savitri Akka and Shekhar Anna. Today, Savitri Akka firmly believes that the government's economic measures to deal with the impact of COVID-19 has not only been effective, but has strongly helped her family. I, for one, agree with her, and hence I am for the motion. Good morning, everyone. To tell you a little about Savitri Akka, she is a widow, a mother of 3 children, and a woman of little to no means because she works as a flower seller, selling flowers at a local flower market. By the end of May 2020, her situation was quite bad. One day, she happened to knock at a door, mask clad, of course, asking my father for some financial assistance. While my father did his best to help her out, he also informed her about the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojan that has set aside 1.7 lakh crores to help those in need. Equipped with this knowledge, the very next day, Savitri Akka, with the help of her flour sellers local association, opened a Jan Dhan bank account for herself and also for her friends. Today, she is the recipient of 2,500 rupees every month, 5 kgs of rice, 1 kg of chana over the existing ration that she's otherwise provided. She also procured a small loan through this program, which helped her obtain the land next to her house on lease, where she today grows flowering plants and is able to source the raw materials for her business all by herself. So don't you think this pandemic, in tandem with the opportunities provided by the government, have been a blessing in disguise to Savitri Akka, as it helped her figure that hidden entrepreneur in her? On the other hand, we have Shekhar Anna. Now, Shekhar Anna has lived a pretty comfortable life his entire so far. He's the owner of a mill, but when the pandemic struck, he naturally didn't have many customers. Soon he started complaining that he was not able to pay his employees and had to let them go. He asked his 2 sons to take over the business. Now, it's not that Shekhar Anna is not aware of the opportunities available to him, because I myself have had a conversation with him about the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan rolled out by Nirmala Sitaram, our Union Finance Minister, in May 2020. Now, this program especially helps MSMEs like Shekhar Anna's. A 3 lakh crore emergency credit line has been announced under this measure that will ensure 45 lakh units that have access to working capital to resume business activity and safeguard jobs. Provision for 20,000 crores of subordinate debts for 2 lakh MSMEs have been made, which are stressed or deemed as non-profiting assets. But Shekhar Anna happens to be among those people who believes that all of this is just in theory and cannot be put in practice because of the corruption at the government side. While he has a living testimony to the benefits of these programs in his next door neighbor, Savitri Akka. Even the real estate industry is being helped by extending the dates of completion by 6 months. 3,500 crores are being spent by the center to provide food grains to migrant workers who do not have ration cards. Small businesses have been helped, whichever are under the Mudra scheme, now receive 2% interest subversion on relief. And I'm sure there are many in the audience who haven't even filed their income tax returns because the deadline has now been pushed to 2020. Well, after all of this being done, the question remains, can we still afford to complain? While a superpower like the United States of America has set aside 8% of their GDP to help COVID relief, a booming economy like India has set aside 10%. So can we still continue to question? Well, even the Harvard Business School is working on a case study to understand how is it that the Indian government has been able to handle the COVID situation in quite an effective manner, especially focusing on the state of Kerala.
Time is over.
I couldn't hear the bell.
Yeah, I rang the bell. I think it was not audible.
We are not able to hear the bell at all for any of the contestants. Till
Yeah.
now,
Oh,
Judge, I'm saying this. I did not hear the bell for a single contestant all throughout.
oh,
Can I please get 30 seconds to make concluding remarks?
yes.
Okay. The question I leave you is the same as that of President Kennedy from United States. It's not that you ask what the country can do for you, but ask what you can do for the country. At the end of the day, what made the difference is perspective and your ability to grab opportunities provided by the government that made a difference for these individuals. So at the end, ask yourself, are you the optimistic Savitri Akka or are you the pessimistic Shekhar Anna? That is what makes the entire difference. Thank you.
Tax flexion.
Barney, just put the mic before the bell. Yeah, 1 minute. Huh? We'll just test the bell. Put the mic before the bell, Barney. Press it.
You heard
Get
it?
it closer. Get it closer.
That's all.
Try it again. And now we can hear it.
You heard it?
Yeah, now we heard it.
Okay.
Okay, the next participant.
Winston Churchill once said that if you want to have an argument against democracy, have a 5-minute conversation with a common voter. Ladies and gentlemen, I am one of the common voter who voted for this government on 11th of April 2019. But I'm not standing here against democracy. I'm here to speak about the policies which sounded so wonderful, especially when my opponent was saying, people have been blinded what has actually happened on the ground level. So today, I, Richa Kaushik, firmly stand against the motion because I have seen the reality on ground that how much happened and how much was claimed by government and media. Let me undress it one by one. So my friend, dear friend Flexen was talking about the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Let me tell you some truth about it. When a prime minister came for the speech, we all were so impressed, 20 lakh crore. Even I was so impressed. But did you notice when in the next 5 days, a finance minister was explaining the distribution of the money, if you count all of that, it does not add up to 20 lakh crore. And if you don't believe me, please go back and do the math because that's what I've been doing for the last 10 days. Second argument. Another point which was raised with by my opponent was about the loans. Savitri Akka, the dear Akka, got loan from the government. Now let me tell you the truth about that also. Loans have been provided by the financial institutions in which the money depends on the banks. The government is not paying from their pockets. So why is the government taking the credit for that? Secondly, there are very rare cases of MSME, very rare, where government is acting like a guarantor. I have my own friends, ladies and gentlemen, who are still yet to get the loan, though have been going to bank again and again. Third point, this 20 lakh crore which comes up again and again by all my opponents. Let me tell you another thing. Did you notice that majority of the policies which were told by a dear finance minister was actually a repetition of an annual budget? Anyways, COVID was there or not, those policies had to be implemented. So why are they saying it again and again? Try to understand how the government has fooled us by claiming that they have been doing so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I got an opportunity to volunteer with an NGO. So we were coordinating the movement of the laborers who were working in Maharashtra so that they could go back to their villages in Madhya Pradesh and UP and Odisha. I have to tell you, situation was way worse than what you hear. And those stories which come up, one or two, they all are agenda based. You hear the news, only one or two story will come up in millions. Even I was hearing one story of a man who took his pregnant wife on a self-made vehicle with attached wheels, a pregnant wife of 9 months, and walked for 17 days. And then the government comes forward and says, oh, we sent the police, we rescued them. This is the reality. And when it even comes to policies, I would like to ask my opponents and all the members present over here, where is the mention about the common man just ignoring the delay of taxation? The business has still not started, my dear friend. Nothing has been done for the middle class, nothing, and that's a shame on this government. I'm not here to run any agenda, to be very clear. But being a student, being a citizen of this country, I'm highly in place of complaint right now. And Flexen, it's not about being pessimist or optimist, it's being about a realist. Let's not be blind by the numbers what our government is telling and see what has happened on ground level. And keeping this debate aside, I urge people to come forward and speak on social media.
Okay, thank you, sir. I will start. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the fragilities of the strongest economies and in the bargain highlighted a need for a rapid response by the governments. The government of India took the first step by implementing one of the largest lockdowns in the world and banning the export of medical goods. And while it came with economic costs, it contained an emergency of massive proportions. A very good morning to one and all. Today, I'll be talking about the measures taken to deal with the economic impact of COVID-19 and why I believe that these measures have so far been effective. In the light of the crisis, the Government of India implemented a special economic package. Let me walk you through it. So the first part of it deals with MSMEs, housing finance and discounts. Fun fact, MSMEs alone employ 110 million people and were the hardest hit by this lockdown. So for them, measures such as increased borrowing limits, collateral-free loans, subordinate debts, along with changing the definition of MSMEs to include more and more enterprises have been made. In the field of business, liquidity measures such as decreasing the CRR by 100 basis points and decreasing the policy repo rates by 75 basis points are set to inject a liquidity of 4.74 lakh crores in the system. But wait, before you hit me with the direct fund transfer question, let me explain. Yes, direct fund transfers have been made, but only for the vulnerable population. They could not have been made for all, as that would have further increased our fiscal deficit, which would have decreased our credit scores in the international lending organizations. In simple language, we would have to be taking loans to pay off loans. That doesn't make much sense, does it? Which brings me to the vulnerable populations. The part 2 deals with them. Measures such as free food under PM Garib Kalyan Yojana, One Nation, One Ration card, and high wages for PM under Manrega have helped these people survive. Moreover, DMTs for 30 million widows, elderly, and disabled people, and 200 million women with Jan Dhan accounts are the only things that help these people survive in these difficult times. And this is the foremost reason why I believe in the success of these measures. What is growth for, if not to help the ordinary thrive? Which brings me to the third part. The third part deals with agriculture and allied sectors. These parts were the only holding up in positive growth while all the sectors were in negative, holding the pillars of our economy. But to help them, concessional credit boost, agri-infrastructure fund, emergency working capital, along with PMMSY and CAMPA fund are leading the way forward. Other initiatives, for example, PM CARES Fund, Arogya Setu app, have raised awareness and are boosting consumer confidence. India today is 1.3 billion strong, and currently the results of these might seem diluted due to such a large denominator, but let it not deter you. The results are being visible. The unemployment rates are back to pre-COVID levels. Forex reserves are surging to a record high of $538 billion. Rural sector demand is increasing, agriculture sector is gaining strength. And in fact, the latest meeting of CII indicated revival of business sentiment and performance, increasing hopes for a steady recovery of India's economy. On that positive note, I would like to reiterate that indeed these measures are being successful. Thank you. I rest my case.
You can start.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. COVID-19 is not the ghost of all the small businesses that crumpled when GST and demonetization hit. It is just a deadly virus which is not only affecting people's health in the absence of effective medication, but also the country's economy in the absence of effective reforms. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In a country populated by 1.3 billion, the poorly planned national curfew was the beginning. It not only killed supply chains, especially of medicines and essential groceries, left over 12 crore Indians unemployed, according to the Center for Monitoring of Indian Economy, but also left the informal sector, the chief workforce of the unorganized sector, which accounts to almost half of the country's GDP, helpless and stranded. The Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, amounting to almost 10.3% of the country's GDP, focused more on potential liquidity infusion and an expected increase in credit offtake. But since both the purchasing power of the people and their income had seen a drastic drop, easy loans were hardly the solution. Injecting liquidity into banking systems was not helpful either, since the problem is not the scarcity of liquidity, but rather of the demand for credit. Under the same scheme, the 20,000 crore stimulus package focused more on the rural economy, which was comparatively protected owing to a good harvest season and good summer crop sowing. Instead, it should have focused on all of those small businesses that were facing a sudden halt in all activities. The farm bills hardly promised farmers remunerative price guarantees. Instead, the new unregulated market spaces called trade areas will now have no governmental oversight, will lead to collapse of mandis and legitimize hoardings. The PM CARES Fund, highly unnecessary to begin with, owing to the already existing PM's National Relief Fund, lacks any transparency of cash inflow or outflow. Furthermore, a similar package with similar objectives called the COVID-19 Preparedness Package was announced, which comprised of loans from 3 international banks. In today's scenario, when the value of rupee is likely to depreciate and repayment in dollars will obviously cost more, this move was again deemed redundant. All of this, while a separate rupees 5,000 crore is being kept aside for the absolutely irrelevant Central Vista of New Delhi. Countries all over the world saw a drop in their GDPs, and yet it was only India that slid down to an astonishing minus 23.9%. Not only because of the already existing 2-year recession or 2-year decline in GDP, but also due to more of theatrics and less of successful efforts towards its salvation, then and now. In the end, as far as optimism goes, a vaccine is surely on its way to combat this deadly virus. It's a shame.
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning to all. I'm here to walk you through the inefficiencies in the measures which were taken by the government to curb the impact of COVID-19. Pandemic is not just a health crisis right now. It has become world's economic crisis in history. While the government claims to bring back the economy on its wheels, the reality has something different to say. With the help of that, I would like to quote Dave Ramsey, a famous philosophist, "You can't be in debt and win. It doesn't work like that." According to a report of a government in August 2020, the GDP contracted to 23.9%. What does it mean? Well, it means that India needs to have at least 10 years to revive this economy back. Pranab Sen, a famous economist, said that the GDP loss can be up to 32% in future. Then why is government hiding these numbers from us? With this question, let me move forward to the next issue in line, which is unemployment. This is certainly the hot topic at present, and I'm sure we all will be able to relate to this. Government depicts a picture that the successful increasing in number of employed force is there. But according to Central of Monitoring of Indian Economy, the data says something else. Increase in the job is only for rural sector. The formal job sector is still at standstill. We are a part of the salaried job sector, right? And the decline is so much. It's like 87.6 million to 67.1 million, which is worrisome. So I would like to take a moment and think about the condition of the formal sector here, and we are a part of it, sadly. I cannot even imagine how government is going to take a pace with that in the long run. With that, let's move to my last obligation on the famous stimulus of 20 lakh crore rupees which government released during the initial days of the lockdown to revive the major sectors of our economy. But sadly, the major chunks such as manufacturing, construction, and services are still declining. Why? Though good news is that agriculture was a shiny outlier amongst them. But that is not the only sector, right? We need to be collided with every sector to move our economy ahead. Therefore, it shows a poor financial management by our ministry. So, in support of my views, government recently in a parliament session claimed that the results they were projecting in the future for the future seems faded. Therefore, the conclusion came is after observing the trend of the private investment declined up to 47% and the consumption rate of private sector to 26.7%. With that, I would like to conclude my statement by saying that measures are to be taken with full analysis and deep planning. Each and every one of us here to help every sector to revive. Each sector is here to contribute some inputs together, right? Thus, planning a certain sector is not the solution. It won't fetch us the right results. As an aspirant and as a work population, as a observer of the work population, I would like to forward my request to the government that they should point out and magnify the lags in the sector where they went wrong and accordingly provide the stimulus. Because until then, we as a citizen won't be quiet until our necessities will be fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Akriti. Arjun, you can go ahead.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Good morning to one and all. I will be shedding perspective in favor of the government and the measures taken to deal with the impact of COVID on economy. Now, before I start, I'd like to set context by stating that the Indian economy has been shrinking 2 quarters before the pandemic outbreak. In Latin, there's a saying which goes, vox populi, vox Dei, which means the voice of the people is the voice of the God. On the Indian democracy, however, the voice of God drives the voice of the people. Various biases come into the picture when we critically examine a government's behavior in any democracy. You and I stand in the largest democracy in the world, home to states with various cultures, ethnicity, religious beliefs, and each one of them with a population larger than some countries. Negotiating through this diversity, as I strive to take a stance, I will come to brass tacks to help my case. Now I request my listeners to take an empathetic stance to hear my arguments. One of the most important drivers of economy are banks. It is an established fact that there was a rise in NPAs pre-COVID. However, due to loss of output post the outbreak, the banks lost confidence in giving out loans. The government announced a series of policies to protect borrowers and lenders while simultaneously encouraging consumption. RBI announced that banks will be given a 6-month window starting from Jan 31st all the way to July 31st to give out loans to small businesses without setting aside cash reserves. The deposit rates were slashed by 75 basis points in order to avoid lenders from playing safe and parking their cash with the RBI. So this way, banks wouldn't be able to misbehave in order to protect their interests at the cost of your suffering. The measures taken by the government within the banking cater to every sector as well. Now, we can take a look at the example of migration of immigrant workers who are the key workforce for real estate development, leading to halting of construction projects. So the government announced that loans taken for commercial property projects were to be treated as standard for another year. Can you imagine what a relief it will be for builders? Just put yourself in the shoe of a builder who's just starting out, only to know that not only has he to stop the construction, but also pay interests. And if he cannot pay back on time, it will be treated as default. One can be sure our government has empathized. Now over to the consumption side, focusing on the needs of the majority of the population. If we pull figures from government reports, our poverty line stands at rupees 1,060 a month. 270 million people come under this category. Under 800 million people would get 5 kg of wheat or rice, in addition to the current allocation of 5 kgs and 1 kg of pulses every month. So the food is taken care of. 80 million families to get free cooking gas. All these facilities for over 6 months. 200 million women to receive 500 rupees a month in their Jan Dhan accounts for the next 3 months. Ex gratia payouts of rupees 1,000 to senior citizens, widows, and disabled. Now, Maslow says that physiological and safety needs come above all. During trying times such as these, survival is the utmost priority. And when we inspect the facts closely, our government has done justice given the sheer volume of our population. All in all, from the way I understand, it's easy to criticize sitting on the other end of the table. Today, as we stand, 65% of the population are my fellow youth. To my listeners, I believe that if change is to be driven, then one must be the change. If we really want our voice.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for giving us the privilege to be the judges of this prestigious and from the students' point of view most coveted Maria Philippe debate contest. We are judging it for the second time. And let me congratulate all the contestants on creating history, because this is the first ever virtual debate contest of Maria Philippe Memorial Lecture Series, debate series. So let me congratulate you on that. And let me also congratulate all of you on being above average debaters. Of course, some have been very good. Some have been not as good as the rest. As George Orwell says, all are equal, but some are more equal than the others. But all of you have been above average. So congratulations on that. And let me also say that public speaking is one of the toughest domains to conquer. And if you take part in such contests, you are actually paving for yourself a better future. So congratulations, all the best for the higher level to those of you who will be announced as the winners in a short while from now. Thank you very much for the honor.
Thank you, Malini.
Thank you.
I concur with everything that Malini said. It was really a pleasure to be amongst you all this morning, a morning well spent. And it's always good to be with young minds and get their fresh perspective on everything. We have given the marks or the grading on the basis of somebody who has debated on the topics instead of just speaking on two separate topics. We have given more emphasis on how it went like a debate. Somebody says something and the other person refutes it. So we have counted that when we have marked our points. Wishing the participants all the very best. It was a real pleasure to be amongst all of you, and look forward to many more debates in the future. Over to you, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you, Viraman.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ramesh and the team at Zyme for this wonderful opportunity to be a judge on your Maria Philippe debate competition. It was a very enriching experience because last year too I was a judge. I think Malini also was a judge, and Veera has joined us this time. Very enriching experience. One thing is because students at that age, they rarely read too much, and to have facts at your fingertips is something that I'm very impressed with, because that requires reading. The second thing is when you combine facts with emotions, that makes an excellent orator. Now, people are not really interested in facts. As you will know, 24,000, 1,20,000 or 20 lakh crores, it makes no difference to you, to your pocket. But when you actually talk about somebody like Savitri Akka, or you talk about Shekhar Anna, and you combine that package with the actual facts on the ground, that is what makes the difference perhaps. So these are two things perhaps that I learned from this debate, and I thank all the students for their excellent participation, especially their reading habits. I'm quite impressed. So thank you very much, Ramesh, and over to Malini for the results of the debate.
Thank you, Brian.
All right.
Yes,
as Veera said, we had to look at the consistency in performance between the two contestants, how they debated the point for and against. And of course, I'm glad to say that there was complete consensus among the three judges. We had no difference of opinion at all. That is why you see that we came back from the breakout room within 5 to 6 minutes. So our judgment was easy for us since we agreed with one another without any difference of opinion. I have the pleasure in announcing the third place in this particular debate. This is the third place in this particular debate. And the third place goes to contestant numbers 17 and 18. That is Akriti Dwivedi and Arjun Malya. Contestant numbers 17 and 18, third place, Akriti Dwivedi and Arjun Malya. Over to Veera Katpitia for the announcement of the second place.
Second place goes to team number 5 and 6, the contestants number 5 and 6, Ruchir Kale and Aditi Gupta. Ruchir Kale and Aditi Gupta, contestant number 5 and 6, team number 3.
Thank you.
Congratulations to them.
And the first place goes to Flexen Joseph Fernandez and Richa Kaushik. That's team number 7 and the serial number 7 and 8. Flexen Joseph Fernandez and Risha Kaushik. Congratulations to both of you and to all the winners, as a matter of fact, for your wonderful performance.
Thank you so much. Vibha, would you want to say which are the colleges these three participants are from? Three teams are from? Vibha, Vishmita?
Yeah, I'll read it out, sir.
Okay.
Arjun Malya and Akriti Dwivedi are from TAPI Institute of Management, and Richa Kaushik, Aditi Gupta and Ruchira, the second place, Kasturba Medical College, Mangalore.
Okay.
And the first place, Richa Kaushik and Flexen Joseph from Manipal Institute of Management.
Okay, that's great. Right. So, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Malini ma'am and Veera ma'am. First of all, thank you for taking your valuable time off and agreeing to be here for the second time, couple of y'all. And it was indeed a pleasure. As you rightly said, I think we had a very good participation. The spirit of debate was very much there. As Malini ma'am said, all of them were above average, some of them are of course extraordinary. And as Brian said, when you bring emotion into the debate, I think it makes the wonderful combination. And to all the students, thank you for having come on the show, come on the debate, and congratulations to the winners. Better luck for the other participants. And for your information, last year the overall winner, all Karnataka winners were from Mangalore. So I only hope that you guys can repeat it again this year, and we look forward to seeing all of you all in the finals. And thank you once again to all the volunteers, to the faculty